Playing you guys at River Falls.
Hell yeah.
We knew we were going to win. We were like,
Oh
this
yeah,
is a
did
great
you?
program. We were like, this is a great program. Don't get me wrong. River Falls in the WEAC. The WEAC schools, first of all, man,
Whew.
that is a tough conference to play in.
It's a war every week, man.
Every week.
On today's episode of the Left Hash Call, we have Josh McDade. Josh is currently a scouting assistant and personnel specialist at Sac State. Josh also spent time as the director of recruiting and player personnel at the University of Mary Hardin Baylor. And also, while he was there, he was a part of the 2021 National Championship team as a player. Welcome to the show, my friend Josh McDade. What's up, man? What's new?
Going on, Seth? Not much, man. Just trying to make it work, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so for those curious, Josh and I, we ran into each other, or Josh ran into me while we were playing against each other while I was at Simpson and he was at the University of Mary Harden Baylor, and kind of had that
Okay.
connection. I definitely want to get into that in a little bit and chat about, the historic matchup that occurred that day. But Josh and I met at the Emerging Leaders Seminar in Indianapolis, hosted by the NCAA. Just so happened to sit next to each other at one of the tables during the first official events at that convention.
Yeah.
And just I saw he was from Mary Harden Baylor. He saw us from Simpson. We were just like, you look like a football player. Did you play there? And then we started going into all of the fun things that happened down there and on September 7th, like 2021. And like you said, we'll get into it. But I want to talk about, this new job that you got going right now. Talk to me about that. How'd that come about, and what exactly are you doing right now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's a great opportunity. It really is touching kind of the future of college football. Um, it's a scouting assistant position, so mainly just helping Sac State in a general sense build their roster in terms of looking for guys and giving them evals, grading them, and then they go onto the board depending on their grade. And then the personnel specialist side of it is really just kind of being that voice of reason, voice of assistance for the GM. Whether he has questions or anything in regard to making a decision in terms of offering a kid, um, decisions on what type of uh, positions we need to worry about in terms of recruiting or in terms of transfer portal, because that's huge now. So
Right.
there's a lot under it, but it's a really good opportunity that is remote as of right now, but eventually will turn into a um, on campus opportunity. So it's a great opportunity. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to work with Sac State and their staff and Zach Potter, who's their GM, and Mark Jarvis, who's kind of like the guy that I'm working a lot with in terms of scouting. So I'm excited, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now there's GMs of all these, big time schools, and you didn't really see that before, but now you're seeing, guys like Andrew Luck. Like
Yeah,
he's now general manager at Stanford. And, that was my introduction into that new, way of doing things, because now you truly have to manage, like, what are you doing with your, how are you managing the transfer portal? How are you managing, bringing in new talent? How are you managing, um, the money side of it? That's all a big part of what's going on now. And it's something that, it's growing the game, and it's growing, it's bringing more jobs to, the world of college football. And, you used to just have a couple scouts here and there, you'd have your director of recruiting, and then you'd have your scouts, but now there's all sorts of positions that are opening up now.
yeah. There's definitely a shift going on in college football, uh,
Right.
but it's all going to be for the better, for the good of it all. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see where college football is going. In the next maybe 5 to 10 years, where it's going to be.
Yeah, and we'll definitely, we're going to pick your brain about that here in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about, just you for a little bit and your journey to where you're at right now, because, you grew up, in Texas, you went to Texas State right out of high school. What was kind of that process, going to Texas State right out of high school?
Yeah, man. So I wasn't highly recruited coming out of high school. I know, hard to believe, huh? I was
Right, right.
good.
It surprised me. I was like, no way.
No, I wasn't highly recruited. I had some small G5 schools hit me. I had FCS programs like Houston Baptist, now Houston Christian, um, SFA at the time, UTSA when they were a smaller program. They weren't as big as they are now. Um, and I had an offer from Yale, so I had like some FCS small schools hit me, and I went to a Texas State camp my sophomore year, and I did really good. I performed really well, and that's where that kind of relationship started building. They started sending mail. I started going up there for visits and things like that, and they had just hired a new head coach who really sold me on the opportunity of being a part of a foundation there that could start something at T State, because Texas State at the time, they weren't a the team they are now. That
Right, right. Definitely
championship
a different team
caliber.
now.
Yeah, yeah, they weren't everybody's favorite team at that time. We were a bottom feeder in the Sun Belt at the time. We struggled a lot, and so it was a dream that Coach Withers sold, and I really saw myself fitting in that. And I decided to go there. And of course, Texas State has great academics. They had a great construction program that I was interested in at the time, and so that's why I went there. And I don't regret going. Of course, leaving, I don't regret going, but learned a lot about myself at Texas State.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you ultimately, you leave Texas State to go to Mary Hardin Baylor. What was kind of that process like? Because, I was a transfer as well. I like to think I transferred before it was cool. But what was kind of your process like? Going from, the Division 1 world, down to the D3 world. I'm assuming down in Texas, Mary Hardin Baylor kind of already had their name established. They'd already won, some national championships at that point. What was your kind of mindset around playing Division 3 football, even though Mary Hardin Baylor isn't your typical Division 3 program?
Man, so be honest with you, dude, I never really knew about UMHB
Really? Okay.
till I actually really hit the portal, and I had a couple of coaches that I trained with and knew were like, "Hey, you need to look at this D3 school out in Belton, Texas." And I wasn't familiar with them. The connection for me was the linebacker coach at UMHB at the time, Coach Jack Johnson, who became our DC. He played for my high school head coach when he was younger, and so he kind of had we kind of had that connection, and it was really cool. But I think for me, transferring from Division 1 to Division 3, I really wanted to refocus my career. Um, really trying to find the right fit for my athletic and academic goals. Kind of had a huge change in kind of what I wanted to do for a career. Texas State didn't have a sport management program. UMHB did. And so it was kind of like everything just kind of fit in the right place at the right time. And then, of course, being able to play for a winning program with a very strong culture, I couldn't turn it down. It was definitely a culture shock when I went there. Um, it was a completely different culture than what I was playing in at Texas State. They were you saw a entire coaching staff of guys who were all on the same page, and it was like wow. And then I remember my first ever position meeting. We go in, and they're not even talking about winning conference. They're
Hmm.
like, we know we're going to win the American Southwest. We want
Yeah.
to win the Natty, and I'm like, oh man, this is different
Yeah.
because it was like the entire year we knew Hardin Simmons wasn't a factor. ETBU wasn't a factor. Howard, we like, man, they're good schools, but we know what's up. We want to win a
Right.
natty, and that was the entire plan and goal and uncommon commitment that year. So I was like, yeah, I can't turn that down in playing there.
Right. It's the crazy part about culture and what that can do for a program. Because when I was at Simpson, there was definitely not that mindset like we're gonna maybe try to compete for a conference champion. Like that was the mindset at the time. And then I went to River Falls and it's like, now we're gonna win every game we play. Like and it clicked in my mind like when I went from different team to different team and that culture shift. But then you're talking about a completely different one. It's like we're not even worried about the conference championship. We're worried about North Central. We're worried about Whitewater. We're
Yeah.
worried about, just let me know when we're about to play those teams, and we'll it's not to say you guys didn't get up for those games, like your conference games, because you certainly did. But what do you think? What do you think led to Mary Hardin Baylor being to that point where they can even have those conversations? Obviously, you weren't there prior to that, but based on your conversations, based on what how do you think they got there?
I would say I understood more about how we got there when I started working there, and
Okay,
I understood that this all started back in 1996. Like
right,
that in what UMHB is and the championship caliber culture they have, it started back in 1996 when they first were like, we need to have a football program. And
hmm
Coach Fredenberg, who is a legend in coaching football and college football, he was a guy who had been around a lot of places and had coached and played championship college football. He played at Texas State back when it was called Southwest Texas State. So and they were good at that time. So he had played and coached uh, championship caliber football. So he just really brought everything that he knew and everything he learned into that program, and he established it. And he really just was like, guys, look, we got two choices. He's like, we can either be the best team ever or we can be the worst team ever. It can go either way. And really the choice is yours at the end of the day. I mean, they really set it up to where that program is going to be a successful team and a successful program for years because the foundation that it was built on years ago was built right. And that's
right,
why before I got there, they were so good. And then when I got there, we were good. I mean, even though
right,
in 23 when we played you guys at River Falls, that was kind of an off year. We went
right,
6-4, and everybody else was like 6-4 is good, but we were like, for
right,
us, that's not good.
right.
We didn't win conference. We didn't go to the playoffs. We started recruiting in December. That's different there.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
and that's really what made me was like, man, like this is something that's not the standard. There's a
yeah,
standard there, and a standard has been set. And coaches, players, support staff, athletic staff, they understand that standard. And that's why every sport is good at UMHB, not just football. Football is kind of the main sport because of the facilities we have, but every sport at UMHB is a championship sport.
yeah. I wanted to briefly touch on this because some people are really curious about this, especially in my circle. Being at Simpson, being at River Falls, like some people are wondering about this. So for background, when I was a senior at Simpson, and Josh, I believe you were a senior as well. I believe.
Yes.
Okay, so we decide at Simpson, our head coach decides we're going to go down and play Mary Harden Baylor, and I remember when I was working out on the field one day, and our head coach comes down. He's like, "Hey, man, guess who I just signed home and home with?" And I was like, throughout, I was like Iowa State, just shits and gigs, whatever. And he's like, "No," and he's like, "Mary Hardin Baylor." I was like, "Who the hell is that?" Like, and Mary Hardin Baylor won, national championships at that point. But I was just so like I was worried about Central College. I wasn't worried about like North Central and freaking Mary Hardin Baylor or Whitewater at that point. I was just trying to beat like these other teams. But I was like, okay, great, excited. And he's like, they won national championship in 18. I was like, okay, looking forward to it. Like we were just coming off a decent year, 7-3, I think. And so we're getting ready for this game and we're watching film and we're like, these guys moving around pretty good. Like they're about 100 pounds heavier and about, a little bit faster than me, that's for sure. But we get, my mindset, no matter what game I played in, I was always like, I'm gonna give it my best. I expect, me personally, I expect to win no matter what. And, you get off that bus, we get off the bus we drove all the way down. I think it was like 15 hours or something like that.
That was
Get
crazy
off.
when I heard that too.
Woo!
When I heard you guys drove, I was like, they drove all the way down here for that, and then it went
Yeah.
all the way. I was like, no,
And our bus didn't have AC either.
oh no.
And so we're driving through Oklahoma in like the middle of the day. You're like, what the hell are we doing? And anyways, I mean, yeah, that sucked. It wasn't anything crazy. We felt like looking back, it's like that was ridiculous. But so we pull up to the stadium for our Friday jog through, and we're like, are we playing? Are we playing like? Who the hell are we playing? Like this stadium is nuts. Like, and I'll put a picture up on screen, but like the stadium at UMHB is absolutely insane. And so we're playing like the Cowboys or something. Like for us, Iowa boys, we're playing the Dallas Cowboys right now. And I'd played in big stadiums before, for like USA national team, that sort of thing. But like this college stadium for Division III is the nicest Division III college stadium I've ever seen in my entire life. But anyways, we get off the bus. We're excited. We're ready to play. It's first game of the year, and we always felt like we had a chance. Just anything can happen. And we knew y'all were a good team, but we didn't quite know how good. Long story short, I felt like you guys scored like every 45 seconds. It felt like it was every drive for sure. But I want to and long story short, we lost 84-6 in that game. I'll never forget the score because I've never seen that many points on a scoreboard before. I like to think we kind of held our own offensively because we did score once against like your, four-string guys. But what was your perspective of that game? Like when you heard, okay, we're playing Simpson, what were you thinking? But I just want to hear your perspective on that afternoon.
So, mind you, this is my first year, so
Right,
I'm
right,
fairly new to the whole Division III world. I'm still learning like who Whitewater really is, who Mount
right,
Union is. I'm learning about those schools playing at UMHB because during fall camp we're watching our games from playing Mount Union in Whitewater to go over things. Like we're going over past games that we may have lost or won, and really, picking like what we did wrong, what we could do right. And so I remember Coach Fred was kind of talking about first game of the year coming up. We're playing Simpson. I'm like, who the hell is Simpson? I didn't even know. I was like, who is
yeah,
that? And then it was like, oh, they're a decent school out in. See, I don't even remember where the school's at. I feel so bad right now.
Iowa. Come on, man.
Iowa, right? Right. And I'm like, okay, like, are they? I'm like, are they good? And my position coach was like, they're a decent school. I mean, they wanted to play us, so I mean, hey, well, we're going to play them. Like they
Right,
want to play. Let's play them. And I was like, okay. And I just remember because funny thing is you guys did a walkthrough at our stadium kind of
right.
before after we did our walkthrough. I
Sounds
think it
right.
was after because it was more in the evening time when you guys did your walkthrough. We usually
Right.
do ours kind of like midday, and
Yeah, it was
I
like
was
90
actually,
degrees when we did ours. I was like, goodness.
and that's another thing. We were like, they're coming down here in Texas. They're probably not used to this weather. It's hot,
Yeah.
but I think our game was like an evening game. It was
It
like a
was
six
easy.
o'clock
It was
kickoff.
I mean, first game of the year, there's still sun, it's still sunny, but how big that stadium is, it blocks the sun pretty
Yeah,
quick. So,
you think
but it
that's
was still, I
bad?
mean, we have a lot of humidity in Iowa, and so that we have that, but Texas has both. Texas
Yeah,
has that humidity and it's not
and
dry heat like AZ. It's like, it's like 100 degrees and it's like 90% humidity. It's brutal.
but but all I remember was I saw you guys did your walkthrough because I sat in our student center and just watched it. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, they're a pretty decent sized team. I'm like, okay, this is
Right.
probably gonna be a decent game. I think by the end of the first quarter, I was like, why are we playing these
Yeah. Me too. Me too.
guys? I'm like, why? Because you had Akeem Jackson, and Micah Hackett, just
Whew.
linebackers, just pew pew
Unreal.
pew. D
Yeah.
lines just tearing it up, and I'm like, Jefferson Fritz catching
Jefferson, that
picks.
dude.
I was like,
Whew.
bro, why are we playing this team? Like, this is
Yeah.
like,
No,
this
no,
is like,
no. Jefferson never picked me off. It was
I'm not
Keith
sure.
twice. Keith got me twice.
Keith Gibson probably did.
Keith got me twice.
I don't know. I remember there. I don't know.
Actually, he might have picked. Well, no, I don't know. I don't think he played past the first quarter. But no, I'm pretty sure. Well, mm, no, Keith got me once, but I'm pretty sure Jefferson didn't get me. No, it's the reason why I know this because I wasn't throwing that dude's direction at all that day.
They
Trust
probably
me.
game plan not to do
No,
that.
no. I mean, we watch that dude's like lifting videos, and I was like,
Yeah,
this dude like is like 5'10", but squats like 600 pounds for like
he,
goodness sakes. But
he was a dude. He was a
but
dude.
and yeah, I mean, just the size, the physicality, and not to here also, our team got totally like destroyed during COVID. Like all of our fifth year seniors that we were gonna bring back, almost none of them, only one of them came back, and basically our three interior offensive linemen all got COVID because that was during COVID,
Dang.
and they were all freshmen. And so their first game ever playing college football was against Mary Hardin Baylor, the future national champions of that year.
And he got
Like,
COVID.
no, the freshmen had to then play. Like we
Oh,
had like juniors and stuff playing, but the freshmen had to play. So it was, I mean, but you go through the course of a game and you're just playing ball. You don't think much of it, but there gets to be a point where you look up on that scoreboard and you're like, I didn't know that was possible. But regardless, let's move on from my pain and go to your good stuff. But you end up going all the way, winning the whole thing. And I don't particularly remember one game being close that year. And I mean, that team was just something different.
uh,
Natty wasn't close. He played North Central, I believe.
yeah, Natty wasn't close at all.
Right.
That was probably the most craziest game I've ever been in. I mean, just I mean, like I said, you just got to think about it. I was a kid that played Division 1 ball, and even coming to campus, people were like, "Oh man, you played at Texas State." But I always told them, I said, "Man, like even a lot of you guys come to T State and play, like." And
Yeah.
that's always been my philosophy about D3 football is there's talent at this level that a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people don't really see because it's not marketed well. It's not on
Right.
TV a lot unless it's the playoffs, unless it's the semifinals or the Natty. But there's so much talent at D3 level. I mean, you got ETBU's starting quarterback just went to Louisiana Tech. He
Yeah.
just signed a scholarship to Louisiana Tech. You got D3 guys going to the CFL, XFL, NFL. I mean, there's talent at that level.
Right.
And so, just a lot of those guys on both teams were just so talented. I mean, that North Central game was probably the most calmest I've ever seen our team. But
Mm.
when we ran on the field, man, it was like lights out.
What do you think? Because you do get a lot of Division 1 guys, that go from Division 1, whether that's G5 or whether that's Power 5 or then Power 5 guys, that if they're going to transfer, they're bypassing FCS, they're bypassing D2, and they're going to Mary Hardin Baylor. What was kind of that sell for then we can kind of now go more when you were director of recruiting there. But what do you think is that sell? Don't go D2, don't go FCS. Like, come to us and we'll win national championships. Is that the draw, or what do you think? What was the sell for that type of situation?
So I would say the sell was never you're going to win a national championship. The sell was you have an opportunity to play for a national championship.
Okay.
Meaning you come here and you work, you're going to have an opportunity to play for a conference championship against Hardin Simmons always. Then you're going to have a chance to play for the national championship, whether it's against Mount Union or Central, Whitewater, Cortland. Now is a D3. I wouldn't say powerhouse, but they're becoming a
Yeah.
known name in the D3 world. And so the sell was always that we sold a lot of things to a lot of guys in terms of opportunities. I never wanted to make it seem like things were guaranteed. Like you come here, you're going to start. Because I always told guys, look, you're coming to a purple power. They used to call us one of the purple powers. You know,
Yep.
us, Whitewater, Mount Union, the purple powers.
Yep.
So you're going to be playing against freshmen or high school guys that were Division I recruits, and then you're going against transfer guys that played at Division I. I mean, my last season at UMHB, I recruited. What I wouldn't say me, my team, my coaches. We all got a kid from Arkansas to come
Hmm.
play Division III football. We got two defensive linemen. One played at Oklahoma, and the other one played at other one played at Arkansas too, to come play D3 football. Um, I mean, we got a lot of talented guys to come play there because, of course, of our name. They come to our campus, they see our stadium. You know, when they come on the visit, I make sure I wear all the rings, right? You know, so they can shake my hand like, oh, okay. Like I always say, visuals are so important when you're recruiting. What a kid sees, they're like, man, I want that.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like advertising and marketing. Like these today's athletes have been marketed to, advertised to, sold to their entire lives. I mean, since the day they were born, they've been sold, marketed, and of everything, toys, food, everything. So you have to approach it like that. You can't always approach it like, this, the old school way of doing it. Not saying the old school way is not effective anymore. It's just it's a different type of athlete now, and so you really got to advertise what you want them to see. You know, transfer guys, I always made sure they were able to spend time with the team.
Yeah.
I used to always plan transfer visits around the time we had school was going on, and when we had like our university play day, which was kind of like a day where the campus is closed, students can hang out on campus. They turn like half of the campus into a carnival at UMHB, and kids can just have a great time. It's no classes, no nothing. I made sure I had transfers on campus that day, so they can see campus like, okay, like this is nice. And then our players used to always do a barbecue during play day, like a little barbecue. I take them over there to the barbecue, let them meet the players, whatever, and that shows them that we have a community here that we want you to be a part of. Freshmen, I'm taking their mom, dad, and them around campus, showing them the dorms. We had pretty nice dorms at UMHB, showing them our stadium. I used to take them all the way to the top of the stadium, to the president's suite. President's suite's like decked out. I take them up there, and they're like, "Wow." I'm like, "Yeah, like this is what we want you to come play here." And 90% of the time, we got the kid we want. Sometimes you had a school like UTRGV come in and swoop them up with money, and we're like, "Hey, that's just we can't compete with that. We don't give money out at the D3 level, unfortunately." And so, um, selling was important, but to me, it was more about letting them see it, like advertising it to them, because you can tell them everything. I mean, you can tell a kid whatever, but if they can
Right.
see it with their own eyes, touch it with their own hands, like, bro, you got them.
Right. And at a place like UMHB, you don't have to really be this is what we're working towards. This is what we're
Yeah,
trying to get to. Because
yeah,
places I've when I was recruiting at Simpson last year, same deal. It's like, hey, we're working towards this goal. We're working towards this. And sometimes for a kid, it's hard because you don't see the evidence yet.
yeah,
But place like UMHB, place like North Central, place like any of those schools that have won championships, no matter what that is, you can see like look at the trophies, look at the rings, look at the nice stuff that's here. You can actually see it versus just hearing, coach talk or hearing, a sales pitch versus I think that's such a good, and that's probably honestly why Mary Harden Baylor's continued to have so much success over the years, other than losing to River Falls, of course, but over the course that we'll talk about that, of course. I got you guys back. Don't worry. Got you guys back. But, being able to actually see what's happening and see what's been done and see where it can continue to go is so much more powerful than just hearing, eventually, or we're working towards this, or,
yeah,
we've done the right things up to this, you know what I mean? It gets you, you know, guys that are ready to win right now versus want to be part of those, startup programs or rebuild programs.
And that was one of the selling points that I used to tell guys is, you're going to go to schools and like you said, they're going to tell you we're trying to get here. Hey, we're a school that's been through that process. We've done it the right way to where we're I'm not going to say we're there, but we know how to get there again
Right.
because we've done it multiple times. I mean, UMHB, I can't. I mean, they won it technically 3 times, but 16 women was vacated because of snitches and tattletales, and so that's all I'm gonna
You want to
say.
expand on that? You want to expand on that?
I mean, people,
You can no
just
comment. You can tell me to fuck off if you want.
no. I mean, just people snitch and people, D3, they get kicked off the team and they complain, whatever. So it's just it's the way it is. But um, that was one thing that we always sold, and that I think they can always continue to sell is, hey, we're not a school that's trying to figure it out. I mean,
Right.
we're a school that has it figured out, and we know how to get there again. We just need to put the pieces of the puzzle together to get there again.
Right.
And so, like, I remember every time I had a recruit on campus and I took him through the stadium, I always started at the front of the stadium where you guys entered when you guys came in. Because,
The stadium side or
yeah, on the
the
stadium,
scoreboard side.
yeah, on the home side,
Yeah.
there's the side the visitors enter, then there's kind of the lobby area. I used to always take them through the lobby area because once you enter the lobby area and you go down the ramp towards the home side where our locker room and stuff were at, there was every championship ring the program has won since the beginning of the program. Well, since beginning of us starting to win. So the 2000, 2001, 2002, the 2004 national championship finalists because we won in 2004, but we lost every ring except for 2016, of course, because of obvious reasons. So I mean that's showing a kid like, hey, we're not trying to figure this out. We have it figured out, and we feel that you're a piece of the puzzle to help us get there again. And you always had dads. I used to always love it because dads would be like, man, because dad was going to pick like which ring was their favorite. My favorite ring is the 2022 conference ring. That's probably the best one ever.
Okay. You got that
I
one on you?
I do have it actually.
Go pull it. I want to. Yeah. Let's see it.
All right, hold on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the 21 ring. This is the 22 ring.
Woo!
This is the best. This is the one I like.
Man, that thing is thick.
Yeah, it is. It
It's a
is.
nice one.
It's nice, but
No,
but
very nice.
and so you have a lot of ways of selling at UMHB, which always struggled to me because a lot of people would say, man, is it hard to recruit at D3 level? At most D3s, yes. It is
Hmm.
it is tough because you're trying to convince a kid to come play for school.
Right.
To convince a kid to pay for school and play football. So he's paying to play football basically, you know. And so at UMHB, I was so fortunate that I had a good relationship with our financial aid department, which anybody who was a Division III recruiting coordinator who's listening to this, have relationships with guys on campus.
Oh yeah.
Don't That will help you out so much. I mean, I had such a good relationship to where if I had a kid, like a transfer who applied on Monday, he was accepted by Tuesday evening
Right.
because I would call admissions and, hey, I have a transfer who applied. Everything's turned in. Now make sure everything's turned in. Everything's turned in, but we really want to get him going. They're like, okay, well, we'll go over his stuff and we'll see if we can get him in. Tuesday morning, I get a phone call. Hey, we went over his stuff this morning. He's in. We're going to send him his stuff, and I'm like, oh, thank you. It
Hmm.
it fast tracks your process. You got to have those relationships on campus, man. It helps you out tremendously because I've seen it. I've seen people on campus, other coaches on other sports staffs who try to big boy the on campus people, and they need a kid to be, admit it quickly, or a freshman needs some help with financial aid. No, they're like, yeah, we'll get to it when we can. No, like
Right.
if I called them and they were, they weren't too busy with their priority work, like, okay, Josh, yeah, I got you. I'll look through it and see what I can do for you. So, I mean, Division III football is recruiting is a challenge. It's an obstacle that you got to come up with. You got to be creative. It's not like being at Texas A&M where you just bring a kid to campus.
Right.
Honestly, I mean,
Or
yeah, you
just
get
bring him to the football locker room or football facility.
yeah.
You
I
know,
mean,
you go to Iowa State, you don't have to show them anything. You don't have to show them the school. You show them the football facility, show them the weight room. You're like, oh, that's good enough for me. But like, you can't not bring a kid to like a classroom at Simpson, for example. Like you just have to do like you can't get to the football facility without going through some classrooms first. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's just one example of Division III. Our offices are with you know it's with other they're with professors and with other. So you have to find a way to incorporate the rest of the school into that recruiting visit because or else you're probably going to be in some trouble if you don't at least get some help from those other areas.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I went on a. I didn't go on a recruiting visit, but my little cousin went on a recruiting visit to Howard Payne, and
Okay.
it was my first time seeing how Howard Payne did their visit, and it was a really good visit actually. I mean, I enjoyed it. He enjoyed it. He committed to Howard Payne, so he's going to Howard Payne. Um, but it made me really see kind of what a school that may not have the resources we had at UMHB, how they put on visits, and it was great. I mean, I was like, this is
Yeah.
a really good visit. I mean, you got informed. I think when a kid leaves a Division III recruiting visit informed about finances, informed about maybe the school in general and where he stands with that school, I think the kid, you have a good chance of getting that kid. I think when a
Yeah.
kid comes to campus and yeah, he takes the cool pictures and meets the coaches. I mean, that's good, but Division III, like I said, these kids are paying for school, so you got to make sure that mom and dad are going to want to know, okay, how much is this going to cost,
Right.
right? Like, yeah, this is all fine and dandy, but how much is this going to cost me? Especially
Right.
dad, they're like, man, FAFSA's going to be tough for us. How much is it going to cost? So I
Yeah.
always made sure that they had a one-on-one meeting with our financial aid officers. So we had a portion of our recruiting visit where we had our financial aid officers, um, staff members, really. I'm gonna say officers. That's kind of weird. Come to our recruiting visit, and we had probably a 40-minute block where they would be able to meet with them. And it was great because you had some kids, some parents that came to the visit unsure, but they left the visit like, okay, like we can afford this.
At least
This
At
yeah,
least at that point.
yeah,
A lot of times, you go on a visit, you might have no clue what you're going to pay for that school at the end of the day. I do like, how we did our visits at Simpson this past year. We did the same thing, like, primarily because we're a private school and, the tag price looks pretty, daunting for a lot of families in Iowa specifically. And it's just nice that you're at least going to have that information at the end of your visit and have a number attached. Whether you know, you're most of the time you're never going to pay the tag price. Like that's almost never going to happen if you're getting admitted into school. But being able to give that kid, an idea of here's how much you're probably going to get, with FAFSA. Here's how much you're probably going to get with, any sort of grants or you know uh, scholarships that you might get academically. It's just nice to have those kids have it in their hand and be able to take it home and weigh those options versus if you just bring a kid around, let's say you're a D3 school with a lot of nice stuff, but shit, I still got to pay this, X amount of money, but how much am I actually going to end up paying for it? You know what I mean? So it's
yeah,
like, oh yeah, all this stuff looks nice, but someone's got to pay for this. It's probably going to be me. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So, but let's talk about, kind of how you ended up getting into this role of, at Mary Harden Baylor of being, first, did you go right to being the director of recruiting or kind of what was that process like?
For me, I had an injury, so I decided to switch into coaching. Um, I started off as a student assistant, so I did everything under the sun. I did equipment. I helped out with video. I helped out with strength conditioning. I mean, I did anything my head coach said, Josh, I need you to go do this. Okay, no problem. I got you. And then I transitioned into more a assistant linebacker role. So I was coaching as a student assistant, but the linebacker role I kind of was able to focus on linebackers. Um, I didn't do that for much long because our guy who was our recruiting guy at the time, he got a great opportunity to go to Kent State and be their director of player personnel. He was something in recruiting or player personnel at Kent State, and I had previously helped him out a lot in recruiting, so I kind of knew his process. I knew the process of how to handle that role. And so he told me, he's like, hey, just want to let you know I'm going to Kent State for a job. I've told Coach Harmon that you kind of know everything. You've helped me out, so you kind of know how to do. And whatever you don't know, you can always call me and I'll help you. And I said, oh, I mean, okay. But mind you, I wasn't getting paid as a student assistant or as a assistant linebackers guy because I was doing GA work as an assistant linebackers guy, but I wasn't a GA. I was still a student.
Right.
And my head coach called me. I remember it too because I was eating Panda Express. I was tearing it up. And he called me and he was like, hey, I don't know if you know that, uh, Charlie's leaving. And he said you kind of know his processes. He thinks you do a good job in a role. A lot of people on staff think you do a great job on a role. If you want it, it's yours. In terms of compensation, we can figure it out if that's something you're interested in. And I said, Coach, I'm for it. I said, yeah, if we can figure out some type of compensation because it's a lot of work. So I said,
Oh
we can
yeah.
figure out some type of compensation. I'm fine. I'll be honored to take that role. And he figured it out. Paid me actually really well. Paid me really, really well for a student doing a director of recruiting type of job. He
Yeah.
couldn't pay me full. I mean, so he paid me part time, but great pay. And I did it. And so that's how I did it. I always get asked the question a lot like, do you still miss coaching? Or do you
Mm-hmm.
like the recruiting, scouting, player personnel? At first I did because I like being on field with the guys, doing the daily musts with them, going through the drills, teaching them scheme, being a teacher at the end of the day, really. But
Right.
when I got into the personnel and scouting, I really enjoyed the relationship building part of it. All aspects of recruiting is important, but I think the most impactful one is the recruiting aspect, is the relationship building aspect of it. Only because that's when you're able to get to know a kid, get to know what he wants to study. So you're able to really understand if he fits in the culture too, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's easily the most important part. I felt like whenever I was recruiting a kid, like, once I got to just get him on the phone, I knew that I had him. At least I was going to get him on campus of some kind. Like,
Yeah.
just being able to, let my personality or let our head coach's personality shine on that kid, I knew instantly, um, you know, based on that first phone call, what kind of relationship I was going to be able to develop. And the kids that I had the most successful with are the ones where it just felt like we were having a conversation. It wasn't really, this big selling point. It wasn't like, look how great our place is. It's just, hey man, what are you looking for in a school? Or what are your goals? What do you want to do with your life? And I think if you take that approach versus, you know, here's this shiny thing, come do this versus what are you looking for? You can kind of develop that relationship a lot quicker. So let's move on to, now at this point, your director of recruiting, you go up to Wisconsin River Falls. Tell me
Why,
about.
why do you
I
keep
gotta,
bringing
I
it
gotta
up?
do it. I gotta. The people need to know. The people got to hear this. Tell me, kind of similarly, what was your perspective on, this is our second time meeting without, officially meeting yet. What was, your perspective on that day?
Playing you guys at River Falls,
Hell yeah.
we knew we were going to win. We were like,
Oh
this
yeah,
is a
did
great
you?
program. We were like, this is a great program. Don't get me wrong. River Falls in the WEAC. The WEAC schools, first of all, man,
Whew.
that is a tough conference to play in
It's a war every week, man.
every week. Uh, and so we were very excited about playing you guys for sure. Um, but we knew we had some obstacles we were going to have to face. You guys had that really nice quarterback.
He's still
Uh,
there.
he's still there.
Got one more. He got med redded last year, so he's got one more. He's got
Wow.
one more. Yeah.
And we knew that you guys were very good, and we knew that if you guys are going to compete for a natty, that was the year. We felt like
Right.
that was the year that you guys were going to compete for a natty if y'all were going to. If y'all were going to win the WEAC, compete for a natty, 2023 was that year.
2022.
It was
Oh
22
wait.
when we played you guys.
Yeah, 2023. Yeah,
Well, yeah,
2023.
we
Yep.
knew that year
Yep.
with y'all
2023.
was a great opportunity for that to happen. And I mean, first of all, let me say this. Uh, I was kind of like the point of communication for our head coach on game day. So refs, anybody would come to me and say something,
Okay.
and I'll go to the head coach and say, "Hey, coach, ref said this." He'll say, "Okay, no problem, whatever." One of the refs comes to me and says, "Hey, it's a little hot out here, so we're going to do a 5 minute break. I
Oh,
think
that's
was it after
right.
the
I
first
remember
quarter or
that.
something." My head coach
Yeah.
was like, "It's 70 something out here. What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Coach, we're relaying the news. They want to do a break. Hey, because in Texas, that was like great weather to us. Out playing you guys that day, that weather was great because that summer,
Yeah.
that
Well, the
summer.
problem with that is I'll tell you why that happened. It's because leading up to that game, we kept having this like wet bulb thing.
Oh
I don't
yeah,
know what it was, this wet bulb thing, and our trainers kept talking about it, and they're like threatening, that we're not going to play the game. Like, oh, it's wet bulb might get too high because humidity and heat. And I'm like, first of all, none of us care about that. Second of all, I'm pretty sure all of the Mary Hardin Baylor wet bulbs are all like way over what they're supposed to be too. And they're practicing in the middle, they're practicing right now. And then it got to the point where the AD was coming and be like, I don't know, we might not be able to play it. And we're like, we got to play this game. Like, so much work had gone into that. Like, we had worked so hard on that game plan. We're like, we got to play. So that, and then we're like, oh, we're gonna take a break. I was like, well, you better not cancel this shit because we're playing this game.
no, but you guys had that song you guys play after every touchdown.
Da-na-na, da-na-na,
I got tired of
da-na-na,
hearing that
da-na-na.
song. Let's say
Oh
that.
yeah.
I was like, what is going on? And that's when we knew 2023 was going to be a tough year for us.
Right. Because not
Uh,
only that, not only, did, we whooped your ass, but we all,
okay,
you
it wasn't
also,
that bad, Seth.
dude, it was pretty bad. That was like the worst loss Mary Harden had in years.
It was.
Anyways,
It
but
was.
you lost your starting quarterback for the year. You lost your backup for the year
Yes,
as
like our
well,
third string guy the rest of the season.
for the rest of the season. And, looking back, we were like, man, maybe we shouldn't have done that. And maybe that we really wish that wouldn't happen because it really screwed up our strength of schedule going forward. Because we were like, because then, you start losing some games. And we're like, shit, like, but the thing is like the rankings would start coming out every week and they're like, okay, Mary Harden's now their 20th or their 20. I'm like, no, Mary Harden's still unreal. Like you guys don't understand how good that team is. Like it was just our day that day. You know what I mean? Like it was our day, but that team is still absolutely insane. Like that the Mike you guys had, what was it? Was that
Duran,
Duran? Yeah, that
yeah,
dude was unreal.
he's great, man. I love that kid.
So
That
he's
kid's my
so
top
good.
guy.
But anyways, now that we're 1-1, maybe one day we'll meet up again and we'll be able
Maybe
to
it's not. Let's
hash.
make sure it's not on the field, okay? Let's make sure
Yeah,
it's more
right.
professional setting.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, right. So, you know, what would you say your day to day was like as director of recruiting? Like how, Was it talking to recruits every day? Was there, a lot more behind the scenes that you had to work on, or was it all kind of recruiting all the time?
It was a lot. A part of my responsibilities was kind of administration of programs, so helping our head coach in whatever he needed, helping our director of operations in whatever she needed in terms of travel, food, or anything. So I touched a lot of operations, football operations in that role. But as in terms of recruiting, it was really a balance between evaluating guys, managing our recruiting board, and at the same time, like you said, developing relationships with high school coaches and players and their families. Um, a lot of the times, I would be doing tours for athletes that would come to campus because I don't know how you guys did it at River Falls, we do like a day called like crew days where it was more of a general visit for on camp for campus students, not athletes, just kids who want to come to UMHB for school. But you may had a couple of
Yeah.
guys who said, "Hey, I play football at you know I don't know, pick a small city in Texas at Jasper High School, and I want to play football here." Then I would get an email or a call, and I would be able to talk to that kid and really learn about him because I mean he's a kid we're not recruiting, so I don't know anything about this kid as of now.
Right.
So it was some days were that, some days were watching film analysis, evals. Some were really strategizing with our coaches in terms of recruiting. With our head coach, meet with him in terms of recruiting. So it was a lot. It was a lot of things. I had my recruiting responsibilities. Planning our game day visits was a huge thing in the fall. So whenever I was playing, like whenever we would play a home game, I was mainly planning our game day visit, making the lanyards, itineraries to send out to kids, communication with kids, making sure catering's ready, decorations and stuff is all set. I used to do. I used to show highlight videos and videos. I used to show our national championship game video also. So making sure that's all on the little flash drive I had and all set. Making sure I was timing it well with the flow of the day in terms of the game schedule when we were playing the game. So by the time I'm done with all that, the game's about to start. Guys are in their seats watching us beat whoever we want to beat. And so it was a lot of that. In the off season, it was mainly strategizing, planning official visits, doing the crew days again, watching film, evals, talking to coaches in terms of travel for them, recruiting travel. I didn't handle recruiting travel as much. That was mainly on the coaches themselves. They would go get a campus vehicle and go, but it was mainly of knowing about what schools they were hitting up in terms of their area. So that's really what that day to day life was. In the summer, it was helping assist and coordinating and planning our summer camp. Getting guys on campus. You may have some transfer visits during the summertime. So that's mainly what it was.
Yeah. Shifting gears just a little bit, when it comes to, recruiting timelines, the early signing day has been moved up earlier and earlier and earlier.
Yeah.
And I want to get your take on this. Now that it's continued to move up, how do you think the recruiting timelines of other levels, and maybe not just Division 3, but how do you think other timelines and other divisions have changed now that these other national signing day, the official national signing day keeps getting moved up?
So the interesting thing is at the D3 level, we don't really have a calendar.
Right.
Our year just kind of goes. You kind of have your own calendar on when you do things. Um, but I used to always acknowledge the recruiting calendar at each level because that let me know when those other schools are talking to these guys. And I had a coach on staff who told me, because I told him, I said, Coach, I want to be great at this. Like, I want to be the best I can be in terms of this. And he told me that one of the things you need to do is know the recruiting calendars and know where everything is and how we can benefit from that. And I did. I made sure that I knew when Division 1 schools were in their quiet period or when they were in their dead period or when D2s weren't really touching players as much, because that's when I would try to go heavy on with a kid that I knew I liked, that I knew was probably an FCS guy or a D2 guy, um, to really get him. And we were successful sometimes. You know, like I said, you always run into that factor of money. You know, kid wants money, and we're like, hey, well, we can try to give him the best financial package we can get him, but it's probably not going to happen. So I think also in terms of the recruiting calendar, it would help me plan when to do early evaluations and when to try to get a kid to commit earlier. But like I said, D3s, we don't really have a calendar, really. I mean, you kind of set your own calendar as a program and you just follow it. But it's good to know when these D2s and D1s have their calendar set in terms of the NCAA calendar, so you're able to more take advantage of that process a little bit more.
Right, especially, with you guys, like you are still competing with, you know, maybe FBS, but like you're competing with FCS, you're competing with
Yeah.
D2, so like you better make sure that your timeline, you at least understand, like, hey, this kid is thinking about committing, to Texas State, for example, but he's still thinking about Mary Hardin Baylor.
Yep.
So, this timeline for him here is gonna it's the time to commit or time to not commit is coming up. So we better jump on him right away, as soon as that date's come and gone. Does that kind of sound right?
Yeah. So if we had a kid from Texas State, we probably didn't get him because that's
Sure.
money. But
Right,
but like
right, right.
like let me say this: we always find ourselves in battles with San Angelo State
Okay.
in San Angelo, Texas, UTRGV. You know they were starting up their program. We always find ourselves in competition with Houston Christian, Prairie View, Lamar, and some kids we got, some kids we didn't. There were a couple of guys who were Division 1 caliber guys that we would get that had offers from maybe I wouldn't say like a North Texas type, but more of like a I don't man, more like a Lamar, like a five school. One of the things I really wanted to focus on was getting outside of the state of Texas.
Mm,
I I had watched some couple of kids that were in like California, Louisiana, Florida, and I was like, man, those are some good kids. We can get them here. Shoo! Like that's only going to make our team better. But we had such a Texas centric recruiting strategy where I kind of wanted to respect that and stay on to that. But we found ourselves southeast Oklahoma State. It's southwest Oklahoma State, where where we find ourselves in a lot of competition with those Oklahoma Division 1 FCS schools, Henderson State. Man, I mean, you can name it. We find ourselves in a competition with kids in a lot of those schools, and most of the time, if we did get them, it was because we did the best financial package we could do, and it was location based. We're closer to home. Kid can drive home to Houston in 2 hours and be back at school the same day. Parents can come on Saturday to watch a game and be back home literally the same day if they want to go back home to Houston or Dallas or San Antonio, which was a huge back. I'm sorry, started backtrack, but a huge recruiting tactic was that location based. It really
yeah.
was. I mean, if you go to the map, anybody can go to the map of Texas, put their finger in the middle of Texas, Belton's somewhere near your finger. We
Yeah.
were within a 3 hour radius of every major city in the state of Texas, except for El Paso, maybe, because that's all the way West Texas. But San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Houston, 3 hours
Yeah.
max, and you're there. So that was huge. But yeah,
Yeah, I remember, speaking of like out of state, we go to Arizona. Both schools that I've recruited for, Arizona is definitely, a big area for us just
yeah,
because there's not a lot of options out there. There's an NAIA school, there's the two big D1s, and then there's NAU, the Northern Arizona. And so there's not a lot of, but there's a lot of talent out there. And so, both schools, a lot of D3 schools have really started to make their way out there. And I remember I was out there and recruiting this quarterback, and I remember I was like, "Hey, what other schools you've been looking at?" and this is when I was recruiting at Simpson at the time. And he was like, "Oh, it's I've definitely because I'd been in contact with him. It was like obviously Simpson." He's like, "Yeah," and then I have a visit to Mary Hardin Baylor here soon. I was like, "Fuck." I was like, "All right."
That was always the thing when I meet people outside of our school, and they're like, "Man, where do you work?" I'm UMHB. Oh shit! I'm like, bro, like you don't know how many people don't. I wouldn't say don't like me, but they would be like, "Oh." I'd be like, "Bro, I just work there. It's not like I just bleed purple. I
Well,
just hey, it's
you've
great."
single handedly ruined the seasons of like, well, me and a lot of other people. So it was nice to dish it back out, but yeah, it's just like it's 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 the whitewater thing. It's like when I hear a guy's from North Central or Whitewater or Mary Hardin or Mount Union, I'm just like, motherfucker. Like it's not a disrespect thing at all or like I hate you. It's just they probably had an experience that was not so positive because they probably get their ass kicked. And so that's just how that goes. But, anyways, let's move on. I really want to hear what you have to, hear your thoughts on this. But what's your experience been like with NIL as far as how it's
Mhm.
changed for you? But then I just kind of want to hear your thoughts on it in general because it's really changed college football.
Yeah,
Loaded question.
yeah. It has. I think first, here's the thing about NIL. It's made recruiting more complex, and it's added another factor for athletes to consider when choosing a school. Facilities, coaches, academics. Now, financial considerations is a thing now, and I think you gotta understand that certain schools are going to win that battle and certain schools aren't. I mean, like your A&M, if you're a Division I FBS recruit, A&M's probably going to give you that opportunity more. You're probably not going to get much from like a PV, a Lamar. Not yet, at least. I think Lamar's turning their program around. PV Coach Tremaine Jackson at PV is going to turn that place around quick. So they're going to start catching up, but you always have that. I think just in terms of how, if I was still at UMHB, how it would change things, not much, because
Right.
before I left UMHB, we were developing our own little thing to help us maximize that NIL space.
Yeah.
You know, you have your open doors thing that a lot of schools
Yeah.
do.
We
It's
use
a
it at
great,
Simpson.
yeah, that's a great thing to use. But I always think at the D3 level, NIL is going to be very, very. It's a touchy thing, and it's going to be very complex to handle because you can't pay for play.
Right.
First of all, that's illegal. You can't, and universities are not just going to give a kid a check.
For
Like
sure.
there's going to have to be some type of stipulations in regarding of money being given to a kid in terms of NIL. Um, I don't know much about what UMHB does because I left before that. While that was kind of in development, so I don't know much about the progress of that. But I know while I was there, we were trying to make it to where we were selling it as opportunities in leadership development, community engagement, uh, all that stuff that makes our university look good, and you in turn will get opportunities to earn some type of money to help you pay for school,
Yeah.
because that's really the big thing at D3 is helping you pay for school.
For sure.
So that money would help you pay for school more than going in your pocket. Now maybe it could go in your pocket, but mainly it's going to help you pay for school. And I thought that was a great idea because now when we would sell it to donors, it wasn't saying, yeah, we got this quarterback we want to get. We want to give him this amount of money just for him to have. It was, no, we want this kid. He's going to have opportunity to do some leadership development, community engagement things, help our program, help our university look good. And in return, uh, you know, he's going to earn scholarship opportunities to help him pay for school or whatever. And so I think that's going to be the challenge that D3s are going to have to do is figuring out how can we make this. in compliance with the NCAA, and at D3 level, also in compliance with the institution, because you got to follow school rules too.
Right.
And so I think it's going to be important. I think, another thing, NIL is it's just another layer on recruiting that we're going to have to figure out. I think it's still being figured out a lot at all levels, because you got the house settlement that's about to happen soon. You got the revenue sharing thing that's going to start this summer. I mean, so many things are going to happen to where NIL is probably going to be a huge factor of recruiting within a couple of years.
Yeah, it's definitely not a thing that I ever had to deal with. Obviously.
I was happy I never deal with NIL
Yeah, it's hard
as a
because
player.
the open door stuff is interesting. It's intriguing because there's I think if you're gonna get NIL or you're gonna get anything like that in the Division 3 world, athletes really have to make their own. Like they have to make their own opportunities, and that's why I liked selling the open doors thing when I was recruiting at Simpson, because you know, at least we have something in place that allows kids to use it if they want, and if not, no problem. I don't think it was. I think it just started when I was about to leave. The crossover period was pretty similar, but at least there's ways that D3 kids can at least put their name out there and get some opportunities versus you're probably not going to lose a kid because of
Yeah.
that, but at least you can be like, I think it's a good idea to like see if you can partner with the local mom and pop shop. Just do an ad and they'll give you a free, gift card. That sort of thing I think is more what we're looking at in the Division 3 world. I don't necessarily know, and you obviously, have been away from it, but the higher level schools, the Mount Unions, the North Centrals, the Whitewaters, I'd be curious to know, like, what does that look like for you guys? But yeah, it is Division 3. I just don't see you losing a kid or not because of that.
I always say this. I had sat in a NIL like thing a while back ago, and the guy said that some of the most crazy, some of the most like noteworthy things. He said, first of all, NIL is its intention is not pay for play. Its intention is not for you to get a check. He said, why do you think they legalized it in the first place, the NCAA? Well, you had players like Johnny Manziel. You had players like Reggie Bush who were earning compensation by doing um, um, publicity things.
Endorsements. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, endorsements
endorsements
and
type things,
publicity.
right?
Right.
Signing jerseys, going to places, taking
Yes.
pictures with people. So the NCAA really said, okay, we don't really see nothing wrong with that. Like, if a kid wants to earn money from endorsements and things like that, why should we say no?
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, hey, you can now earn compensation off of your name, your image, and your likeness because of players like Johnny Football, Reggie Bush, all of them.
And honestly gets them out of like tough situations and
Yeah,
potentially dangerous situations because, the Johnny Football documentary came out and it's like, it could have been pretty dangerous. Like he could have been in some dangerous situations versus now, like, I mean, it's completely, it's legalizing that made it safer. It's like legalizing booze back in like the whatever, however long ago that was. It made it safer. Like
yeah.
it's like a lot of these things. You know what I mean?
And NIL is truly influencer marketing. That's really what it is. That's what it is. It's supposed to be. And so I think when you tell your athletes, hey, NIL is not something where we're not, and I'm not saying the big schools are doing this because you never know. I think that's another thing is you can't say what Alabama or A&M are doing because you don't know what they're doing in terms of NIL. They could be doing things the right way, but because they're Alabama, they're A&M, you're going to say, oh, no, they're paying their kid. They're just giving that kid $1 million. Like, you just don't know that. So I think
Yeah.
it's important to understand like NIL is really influencer marketing. It's really what it is. It's giving an athlete the opportunity to market himself or herself to earn compensation, whether that's representing a clothing brand, representing a restaurant, or representing a lawyer firm, doing commercials for a lawyer firm, and that firm pays them per commercial or per post, per social media post, whatever. That is
Right.
NIL at its purest form. And then you get into the
Exactly.
collectives. The collectives, that's where NIL went completely sideways. It's because you have
Explain that a little bit.
like why they went sideways.
Just with the collectives and why that kind of makes this whole thing a little shady at times.
Well, because now it's a great example is the situation that happened at UNLV last year. The quarterback was promised a certain amount of money, didn't get it. He's like, "Well, I'm not playing anymore. Then, like, you're not gonna you promised me a certain amount of money, you're not gonna give it to me. I'm not playing anymore." I think when you have third parties situations that are not affiliated with the institution, they need to be affiliated with the school in some sort of way, because then you have a way to keep a check. The university, somebody designated can say, "Hey, you can do this. You're not allowed to do this." When you have a third party that's not affiliated with the school, that's just giving kids money, you can run into that problem of promises not being fulfilled is a huge thing that I hear going on in terms of collectives a lot. Is a lot of athletes are saying, yeah, they told me they're going to give me this or they're going to get me this, and I didn't get it. I call them to see what's going on, and they're like treating me like crap, or they're not answering my phone calls. It's like um, it's like understanding why why that happens, and so you just really got to understand that like collectives, it's a touchy thing. They could be great, but at the same time, they could be really really sneaky with it.
Right. Yeah. Let's talk about something else pretty similar to, as far as controversial, maybe a little bit, is the transfer portal. When transferring was first a thing, I transferred high schools, and I did that. What 20? That'd have been 2016 into 2017,
Hmm.
and I, this is before transfer portal was even a thing. Like I didn't know anything. I just knew I don't want to play. I don't want to play at this school anymore. I don't want to be here anymore for whatever reason. I'm going to go play at this school now. And now, and it was because I didn't like the situation. I didn't like, what was going on. But now it's turned into I didn't play my freshman year, or I didn't get instant gratification. I didn't get that instantly. And now I'm just going to move on after 1 year. How do you see the transfer portal? How has it evolved? Do you think it's a lot of those situations where kids just aren't playing right away? And how have you seen it evolve over the years?
Yeah, I think half of it is that. I think half of it is a kid just not really understanding development. I think the other part of it is sometimes kids are not fits. They pick a certain school and they realize maybe this isn't a fit for me, um, and so they decide, hey, I need to search for another home in terms. So I think um, it it really it differs. I think for the kids that kind of rush the process a little too much, I think you really got to understand the development part of, hey, your first year at a school, you're probably not going to play. That's
Yeah.
okay. You got to go there and develop, and then from there, your sophomore and your junior year, then if you're still not playing, then you can make a decision whether if transferring is a optional is an option for you. I think in terms of kids that just realize schools are not fits for them, I think that is really why the transfer portal is great. It gives kids opportunity to find a second home. I think if a kid's now trying to find a third, fourth, or fifth home, now you got to really those schools got to really start questioning that kid. Like, okay, you're on your fifth school. Like
Right.
what do you think? Why do you think you're transferring every year or so? Um, I
Yeah.
think the transfer portal it's made it to where certain schools don't rely solely on it, but they want immediate players that can come in and make immediate impacts. And a kid that was at a school where he probably doesn't fit can go and be an immediate impact somewhere else that he may fit. So I think the transfer portal it's a hit or miss depending on how you use it as a player and as a program and as a coach.
Yeah.
I think it's a great tool for roster management because, like I said, if you're recruiting high school guys, and you're developing them, and then you can then say, okay, well, we got this high school guys, but we need some guys to come in who can play immediately. Well, boom, the transfer portal is there. You're able to go through it, pick guys who you can talk to.
Yeah. If you look at kind of the numbers of the amount, just the sheer number of kids that are entering the portal across all sports, really, there's just so many that are entering it. What do you think are the best practices for managing the transfer portal as a recruiting director, recruiting scout, as well as a personnel director or
I think it's
specialist?
about targeting specifics, ensuring fit, and really understanding a kid's value in your system. I think when you just solely do it on where he's been, you you definitely run into the issue of him not being a fit. I think the big thing when it comes to transfer portal recruiting is culture and scheme and system fit. Can a kid systematically fit into your program? Does he culturally fit into your program? Is he a kid that's going to come in and be uh, a a benefit to your program? He's going to be a guy you don't have to worry about in terms of classroom. He's a guy who's going to get along with his teammates well? Or is he going to be an energy vampire? Is he going to be a guy that's going to suck out the energy out of the room every time he walks in? Is he going to be a problem in terms of grades? I think it's so important to understand fit. And I'm not saying every school, but I think some schools just recruit based off where a kid's been. Oh, he was at Texas. Let's get him. But he comes there and he is a bust because he doesn't fit that program.
Right.
So I think, and there are so many examples in college football that you can look at. I mean, there's so many for me to name that you can see kids that go to certain schools and they're transferring every year because it's not a fit for them. So I think ensuring fit and scheme fit is important.
Yeah. Now, how do you think, you know, there's so much movement now and there's so much roster turnover depending on the level. But how do you think that increased player movement and that increased roster turnover has ultimately affected, culture and teams, in college football?
Um, I think it's affected teams by really just you have to prioritize positions that are important, right? And so you really got to figure out, and that's why I think meeting as a staff is important because you're able to really say, okay, we struggled offense on the offensive line this year. We need to prioritize offensive linemen, um, and then from there you can really split it into high school recruiting. Okay, how many high school guys do we want to get? Do we want to get any high school guys?
Yeah.
Um, I always say I think portal recruiting is going to be a priority. That's going to be the priority, and then afterwards, okay, let's go get some high school guys. But I think the schools that prioritize long term development and short term performance, meaning you're able to get guys in the portal, like I said, who can come in and be immediate help, who can help you in that short term performance. But at the same time, you go get a high school quarterback, you develop him. Now you got a quarterback that is not playing for a year, but he's probably playing for 2, 3 years now.
Yeah.
So I think it's really just prioritizing your roster and understanding where your roster is at and what fits, what puzzle pieces you're missing in order to make it a better roster.
Yeah. With all of the transfer portal, NIL, even, getting into kind of some of the super conference stuff, what do you think college football is going to look like in 5, 10 years?
It's going to be I always say in terms of personnel departments, it's going to look a lot like NFL. It's going to be a smaller model of an NFL front office. I mean, it's already starting to look like that. You're starting to have programs have, directors of player personnel, direct GMs. Then they're starting to have director of player personnel, then director of college scouting or college recruiting, then director of portal recruiting. Like you're starting to see that structure come at certain schools. I'm, and so that's why I think personnel departments are going to be at in the next 5 to 10 years. In terms of money, I think there's going to be so much money that's going to be poured into college football. You're going to start seeing staffs look big. You're starting going to see facilities are going to look like NFL caliber facilities. You are going to see things like that start happening, just because of the fact that I think scouting is becoming more of a factor in college football. Because if you're going to spend money on a guy, you want to know if he fits your program well, if he's a good person, if he comes from a great family, if he is a guy who's coachable. You want to know that. So scouting gives you the ability to really um, look at that. You get to watch his film, give him a grade based off of his play, not his personality, but his play on the field. And then so from there, you're able to a coach can say, okay, as a player, he's a quarterback. He has very good bursts, very good footwork. Is a good guy in the pocket. Has great pocket awareness. Shoulder back touch is great. Touch passes all right. Great velocity in the middle of the ball, in the middle of the field when throwing the ball. So you're able to say, okay, as a player, he may be a, let's say if ten's the best and one's the worst, he's a 6 or 7 on your grade scale. So now as a player, okay, 6 or 7, he may fit our program as a player. Now from scouting, you get into the relationship building part where you then go and meet the kid. You build that relationship. You figure out the type of person he is. You figure out the intangibles of him and what makes him him. And then you learn about you recruit his parents. You recruit his family. And so that's why I think that's how things are going to look. And scouting is going to become huge in a lot of programs all across college football, not just Division Ones. I can see Division Ones, of course, some have scouting directors or scouting coordinators, but I see FCS guys starting to get director of player personnel, then director of scouting. I do see D2s investing in scouting more. I do see D3s starting to also invest in some scouting networks also.
Yeah, that's you wonder because you know definitely the livelihood of D2, D3, and FCS at times relies on, and honestly, all NCAA governed sports relies on the success of Division One FBS college football times, and
Yeah,
it is scary because of the chance that they'll end up splitting and doing their own thing.
yeah,
Um, and I want to get your opinion on that because there's only one sport that isn't, or one level of one sport that isn't an NCAA sanctioned championship, and that's college football. And so, in ways they've already kind of split, do you think that that'll happen? And then, if let's say it does happen, how do you think the smaller schools will survive?
So, do I think it'll ever happen? I don't necessarily think they would leave the NCAA because there's money that they get from the NCAA, and you really question whether certain schools can survive without getting that budgeted money from the
Sure.
NCAA. But you have your big schools, your big P4 schools. I think it's a long time from now, but I do see that happening. I do see them saying, "Hey, we can survive through media deals." I mean, because look at the NFL; they survive through media deals more than they survive through ticket prices. So I
Right.
see with more money being invested in television and technology that they could say, "Hey, we can build our own league and survive off of negotiating great TV media deals and then merchandise deals and media rights and all that, to where we can then suffice on our own and build our own league." I think it's a long way from now. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. But how I think smaller schools are going to survive, I think it's important to understand that the way the NCAA divvies up their money, smaller schools, especially Division III schools, already get a small portion of that money.
Yeah.
And so I think if Division 1s were to say break off and start their own, that money then will just funnel down. Most likely, it will just funnel down from Division 1s to Division 2s, Division 3s. So you'll see more money being invested. You may even see more smaller schools on TV, which I think needs to happen. I think there needs to be a dedicated way of getting those smaller market schools on television, and getting their visibility out. I mean, when you look at the Division 3 playoffs, they only put the semifinals and a national championship game on television. And then when they are on television, they're like on. I think the national championship game is on ESPN, of course, so that's for everybody to see. But the NCAA ones, they're like on. I think division. I mean, ESPN 3 or ESPNU. Like they're
Yeah.
on those deep ESPN channels. You got to really look for. And so I think just having that money funneled down, it'll be great. You're able to see more schools want to invest in their facilities, especially Division 3s. You'll see more schools probably invest in certain scholarships for certain athletes. It'll all have a trickling effect, good and bad, but I think it'll be
Mm-hmm.
more good than bad.
Yeah. So, last thing before we get you out of here, I have a segment. It's called the Left Hash Draft. And essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to draft things pertaining to a specific topic. And we're going to snake draft it. Okay. It's 4 rounds, and I'll give you the choice of first pick or the snake. Okay. And the topic is going to be former Mary Harden Baylor players.
Okay,
Okay. So, do you want the first pick or do you want the snake?
I'll take the first pick.
All right. Go ahead. First pick.
My first pick with the left hash draft is going to be Jefferson Fritz.
You bastard. That was going to be my first pick, too. Okay. I'm going to take Brandon Jordan.
Brandon Jordan. Wow, man. Okay.
And then I'm going to take KJ Miller.
KJ Miller. Oh, okay. I got you. All right. I'm going to take Durant Hill and
Woo!
Aaron Sims.
Okay. Who was the other one? Who was the second one?
Aaron Sims.
Okay. Okay. And I will take for my last. Wait. I get 2 more. Okay. I will take Micah Hackett. And I will take Cal King.
Okay.
Okay. And your last pick.
My last two or last one.
You got one more.
I need a quarterback. All right. I will take.
I took the GOAT. Sorry.
Uh, yeah, you took the modern go. I'll take the legendary Andy Padron. Led
Oh, yeah.
USC to their first natty. I'm taking Andy Padron. If he ever sees this, he's gonna love it.
Okay. Perfect. Well, man, I can't thank you enough, for coming on the show. This was a blast. I had a lot of fun, you know, picking your brain about the current state of college football, talking player personnel, talking recruiting. If you could give, if there's a young coach or someone looking to get into player personnel or, recruiting director, roles, what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, one thing I would say is, and we all know this. This business is relationship driven. It's all about who you know, and it's all about right timing and right place. And I think I understand that the demand to work in this industry is high. A lot of people want to work in college football, but what separates a lot of people from others is your passion and your work ethic. And so, just for anybody out there, really, man, just build a work ethic that shows your passion and your dedication, and understand that it's all about timing in this industry, and it's all about relationships. If you really focus on that, be kind to people, love on people when you can, and you are going to be blessed for sure.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say about how can here? First of all, where can people follow you? Where can people follow along your journey? Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. My LinkedIn is my name, of course. Just type that in. My Twitter is Joshua J McDade. Follow me on there. Um, and so yeah, I mean, follow me, conversate. I like to conversate, set up a phone call, talk or text, whatever. I love that stuff. So yeah,
Absolutely. Thanks again, man, for coming on the show.
thanks, Seth. I appreciate you for letting me come on, man.
Thank you for listening to the Left Hash Call. For more episodes, you can go to Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts. And be sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter, and even Facebook if you're into that. And I would really appreciate you subscribing, following, or just continue to listen. We'll see you next time. Peace.